Hello and welcome to the Supernatural Track here at Continual. I'm your host, Gail C. Martin, and tonight we're going to be talking about metafiction. You know, like the season arc, I feel like there should be a choral thing behind that. But we're going to talk about metafiction and otherwise all those episodes that kind of broke the third wall or gave us that knowing look that they were having a good laugh at themselves or at outside of the actual show itself. So, but first, let's let our wonderful panelist introduce herself, starting with Carole.
Starting with me, I'm honored. I'm Carole Stokes. I've been a Supernatural fan since season 3. I started writing fanfic in 2012, which I write to this day. And I love talking about Supernatural. There's always something new and interesting and fun to address.
Okay. And I'm Gail C. Martin and Morgan Bryce. As Gail, I write epic and urban fantasy. As Morgan, I write urban fantasy, male paranormal romance. And I fell in love with this show halfway through season 11, binge watched 11 seasons in 4 months to get to the start of season 12 and haven't looked back since. So yeah, huge fan. And as Carole said, there's always something new to talk about because we have so much wonderful canon, not to mention all the fanon as well. So meta episodes are the ones, like I said, that break the third wall, that give us that knowing wink and look that kind of transcends that the actors are in a show and we're out here, that sort of bridges that gap, or that are just extremely self-referential. So what's your favorite meta episode? Because we have so many to pick from. The show just really embraced that. What's your favorite?
I mean, I think I've got to go with the classic, the monsters at the end of the book. That's really our first big meta. And it's done so well, so tongue-in-cheek, lays so much groundwork for the future. We meet Carver Edlund. Even the fangirl who doesn't want to connect them with Carver, but she's like, you know, she's got the Supernatural tattoo on her butt. and they're like, oh, here's mine. And it's so humorous, but not unrespectful. It's not like they're throwing anyone under the bus and they're not denigrating anyone for being fans. They're just like, hey, here they are. And your reality, it's in this book. So we can read about what you're living while you're living it, which, you know, it doesn't get more meta.
Yeah.
And it's just really well done. And then we have great scenes of Dean like reading the books. And he's like, man, I'm full frontal in this. Or then they're at the laundromat and he's trying to tell Sam something and Sam's got his back to him and Dean reads, but he has his pensive brooding shoulders and Sam says something and Dean's like, nope, those are definitely your pensive brooding shoulders. I mean, it's just really beautifully done, very clever, not so clever that it becomes you know, saccharine or obnoxious or anything, but really fun. And like I said, really lays the groundwork, not only for things like the Carver Edlund character, who of course ultimately is not Carver Edlund, but the recognition, the Winchester's recognition of the fact that there is a world out there that actually knows of them in a fictional sense, and all their secrets are laid bare.
Literally. Well,
Yeah.
and right after that whole thing with the brooding shoulders, Dean's reading and goes, hey, you just thought I was a dick. And Sam gets this little smile and says, huh, what do you know?
It's so perfect. It's so perfect. They just clearly had a really, really great time with it. You couldn't have had future meta like the French Mistake or anything had you not had this episode to begin with, to bring in that added dimension of here's their world and oh, here's kind of this world aware of their world. Yeah, it's terrific.
which I was going to bring up the French mistake, because there are so many meta episodes in Supernatural, but some of them are just so quintessential. The French mistake is definitely one of those, where they get sent by Balthazar into a version of the world where they are Jared and Jensen playing Sam and Dean, and angels aren't real, magic isn't real. And of course, the show, based on the Carver Edlund books, why would anybody want to watch a show about our lives? I don't know. Doesn't sound like many people do. Just those inside jokes that, and Misha, hola Misha amigos, tweeting, which apparently he did in real time when the episode aired.
Oh, yes. And that was a big thing at that time. Much as Jared and Jensen were often doing the Facebook Live videos, Misha was a big tweeter, and he would tweet a lot. And so to have him going, hola, Misha amigos, and all that stuff, Jared and Jensen pulled a fast one on me, was completely from real life. So that was really, really well done.
Well, and the whole, you married fake Ruby, alpaca,
Warhol, the Warhol portraits. Yeah. Which actually,
the greenest animals.
oh yeah, all of that was just so, from the moment they step into Jensen's trailer and there's the screen is playing him as Eric Brady, and he's like, that's fake me, this is fake mine. That's all wonderful. And then, yeah, they go to Jared's mansion, and it's everything you think a pretentious TV actor's pretentious home would be, that they have these big fake Warhol paintings. And isn't there one of themselves, and Jared like on a horse, and it's just, we know in real life now subsequently that their house is not like that in real life, but it fulfills all those kinds of fantasies about what a TV star's home must be like. And Genevieve attending the, what is it, like Save the Otters or something,
sort of otter rescue thing. Yeah.
He has a black Amex card, they can buy anything they want. It's, again, just hilarious. And deftly done. They just skewer the whole perception of TV actors and their fame. And then you get into the whole beautiful part of Kripke. Oh, first you have them acting. They have to act in a scene.
There's a key, there must be a lock.
Oh my God, it's so horrible, it's beautiful. And one of my favorite moments is that the director and his assistant sitting there, and they're like, what is happening? And the other one's like, an atrocity is happening. I must use that line in real life at least once a week.
Well, and I guess we could cut out this, them talking at the end and reshoot this. And the Bobby Singer says, do you want to get the hate mail from the fans if they don't have the moment in the car? I don't think so.
And so, and then they have Kripke, they're calling Sarah Gamble, they have Kripke, and then is it Raphael, or Raphael sends a hitman, and he's like, Kripke, it's like a spaghetti Western, where he dies in slow motion with the blood and everything. Oh, it's hilarious.
It was terrific. And we can't end talking about this episode without mentioning that in fake Jared's mansion, on the mantle is a wedding picture of Jared and Genevieve that Jared didn't realize she was bringing to set. So yes, he did marry fake Ruby.
It's just great. It's so great.
So what's your next favorite?
Oh, it just went out of my head. I'm actually, and now this will be a controversial opinion, I'm not a huge fan of fan fiction. I know. I'm sorry. To me, it's a little too contrived. Like they went a little too far into the whole self-awareness of self-awareness. And uh, the proprietorship of the girls writing and directing it was, to me, almost a little heavy-handed. And there wasn't really room to be in on the joke because they were kind of dominating it. And so I had a harder time with that, but I know it's a big favorite. And I totally respect anybody who it is a favorite for. It just didn't work for me as much.
I loved the moment when, well, I love the version of Carry On that they sing in that.
That's very nice. Yeah. Yeah.
I love the moment that you can see Sam and Dean, maybe for the first time ever, see that song as being perfectly describing their lives. There's just this epiphany expression. The girls are overly serious and take themselves way too seriously, as high schoolers do. But I love that moment when they see themselves in it. And, of course, it also gave us the "you can't spell subtext without sex" line.
It was not without its moments. And I do love the end when Chuck appears.
Mm-hmm.
That was really, but yeah, overall, it didn't cut it as much for me. However, I love the one, and the title just went out of my head, with the convention, where they have the convention. I'm sorry?
The Real Ghostbusters.
The Real Ghostbusters. That one is great. Of course, conventions are A, nothing like that. And B, I'm not quite sure time-wise where they were with starting the real conventions and stuff. But I love this whole kind of very piecemeal, pulling themselves up by their bootstraps kind of thing. We're like, here's this panel and here's this panel and the people are cosplaying. And then there's a real thing going on and poor Chuck has to vamp. Well, he's not Chuck yet. Carver Edlund has to vamp, and he's got Becky going on there. And then we have the beautiful couple who are cosplaying Sam and Dean. And at the end, when they talk about it, Dean's like, why would you even want to do this? And they're like, who wouldn't want to be someone who can like save the world and their brother and have this intense relationship? I'm a copy repair guy. Like, where's the excitement in that? And when they talk about that, it was really, really super well done. And again, you see the realization with Sam and Dean, where they realize they're so used to looking at it from within the trenches where they are, to see it from the outside like that is really a new perspective for them. And it's just really, we have the case within the case, we have the fake case where they got to find this stuff, but then we have the real case with Letitia, and it's really fun, but it strikes some really good emotional notes in there too.
Yeah, see, my headcanon is that after that, the two copy repair guys went off and became hunters.
Might be, could have been. Now there's a plot bunny.
Yeah. I got to mention Scooby Natural, because I was a huge Scooby fan, still am, from the very beginning, and seeing Scooby Natural and Supernatural, Scooby-Doo and Supernatural come together is just like a lifetime dream come true, and played with so much respect for both properties. They didn't make fun of Scooby-Doo. They didn't do bad by Supernatural. They really had a lot of dignity and respect for both shows and fans. But there are just so many moments in that, like Jinkies, Ruh-roh, son of a bitch.
I'm going to need a bigger mouth.
Yeah. Just so many things with Dean geeking out about finally, meeting the Scooby Gang, and the Scooby Gang freaking out when they find out monsters are real. And just so many great in jokes on that were played so well. Within the wrapper of what was the original Scooby-Doo pilot episode with the green ghosts, A Night of Fright is No Delight. Told you I was a Scooby fan. That one was just done perfectly with in joke upon in joke upon in joke. So what's your next one?
Oh, I don't know if I can think of another one. I think those are certainly like classics.
Well, there's It's a Terrible Life.
Oh, see, I guess I didn't think of that as a meta so much as an AU. So
I have a whole list taken from, I think it was Screen Rant's list of top 25 meta episodes.
Oh,
we can debate whether they actually are meta.
Well, you can keep hitting me with them, that's for sure. I certainly, It's a Terrible Life is absolutely a fabulous episode. And let's just say there is a whole realm of fic out there it's called Swesson. So Smith and Wesson. There's a whole realm of Swesson fic out there, either set totally in Swesson or starting in Swesson, and when they find out, or it really opened up such a world of possibilities with resetting these characters in this completely different kind of life. And yet they find their way to being hunters nonetheless, and they find their way to being brothers nonetheless, even though they're never actually brothers. But they're like, wow, we really work together really well. How did that happen? Wow, I'm really a natural at getting rid of this. It's a beautiful, beautiful episode.
Yeah, and I think another one is Changing Channels, because you've got the trickster putting Sam and Dean into all these very familiar vignettes from other shows, whether it's Dr. Sexy or what's clearly NCIS, who wears
sunglasses
at night, douchebags, that's who.
Actually, that's more CSI.
CSI, okay.
CSI was big with the sunglasses at night and the dry banter. Well, I say, that kind of thing. The Dr. Sexy stuff is so spot on for Grey's Anatomy. And I have watched Grey's Anatomy from the very first episode to this day. I still watch Grey's Anatomy.
Oh, we also got Knight Rider with Sam as the car. And
get out of my trunk.
Yeah. Game show, and so many the X-Files kind of feel to it that I thought that was another one that and the whole Laverne and Shirley thing at the beginning with the 70s
cheery, the cheery intro, and it's all funny, and then the bright kitchen that they're in with all the bright decor.
Built for two. I mean, that is so Laverne and Shirley.
Yep. Yeah, it was great. And the segues are so beautiful. Here's Dean on the operating table and the feet, and then the feet move and it's the elevator. They just kind of cut from one to another in a really, really such a great manner. I mean, Sam and Dean are struggling in the beginning to kind of catch up to what's going on, but then they get in it, and as soon as they see the new thing, they're like, okay, we're ready, and we got to just keep getting through this and stuff. But the parodies of the genre shows they do, like Grey's Anatomy, like the Japanese game show, are just so well executed. Sam's health PSA is so well executed. It's just like anything you see for, the products of, addressing those kinds of issues and stuff.
Yeah, it was, and they played it so straight, and it was so great. Of course, they didn't learn the lesson that Gabriel wanted them to learn, but that one was just a truly memorable one. I'd also say, Hollywood Babylon, when they get pulled onto they're investigating deaths at the filming of a horror movie, but there are so horror movie.
A schlocky horror movie.
Schlocky horror movie, absolutely. But there are so many in jokes about the business of making television in that show, you know, where there's a PA that comes by and Jared says, "What's a PA?" And Dean says, Sam says, "What's a PA?" And Dean says, "I think there's some sort of slave." And Dean is always eating everything
At the craft table.
because there's free
Oh,
food.
and they go interview that guy who was like in even more schlocky movies, but Dean knows all of them because they watched all this stuff as they were growing up. And he's like, "Oh, and you were in, whatever it is, the third movie of that series and stuff." And the guy's like, "Oh yeah, I'm so glad you watched it." And yeah, it's really, really good. And even a little bit of homage to like the old horror movies where we have the actress who was in black and white, and they reference that kind of thing. That was really cleverly done. Really clever.
Well, and then there's Lebanon, where we get to see the boys, if they let the pearl that they've wished on continue, Sam is going to be a really uptight head talk speaker who eats a lot of kale and has no life. And Dean is on the most wanted list.
There too, also, let me just say, a number of fanfics take that premise and do a lot of really interesting things with it. It's like once they do something like that and they just kind of open a door to a new realm of things that could have been, they do it with the French Mistake. They do it with the very slight glimpse we get of the Richesters, which is the Sam and Dean from the alternate universe who come in and have been wealthy and have the jet and, toasting dad all the time because he was such a savvy, hunter businessman. Hunter Corp does very well. And that too, opened up a whole new way to view those characters and their relationship and how they function in the world and the world that they function in. So Supernatural was just so great about really being so explorative and experimental in any way they could think of, and Fix certainly then takes those and runs with them.
Well, and I think something that's also really important to note with most of, if not all of the meta episodes, but I'm thinking particularly of like I mentioned, that moment at the end of the musical episode and the episode, the insight at the end of Lebanon and also the French Mistake, where, in French Mistake, Dean says, this isn't out. There's no apocalypse here. We could stay here. You've got a pretty good gig. And Sam says, but we're not even brothers. They'd rather go back and face all that to be brothers than take the easy way out. And in Lebanon, seeing Gail, Sam, and Wanted Dean as their alternates, you have that wonderful moment where Dean says, I'm okay with who I am and with who you are and with where we are. I'm okay with that. And that was a long time coming for them to be able to say that. It's such a weighted moment, but we wouldn't have gotten that without that glimpse of how it otherwise could have been. And of course, baked into that glimpse is all sort of meta stuff on why Sam would be, crazy about Gail.
Yeah. And we see that same kind of realization in what is and what should never be. Because not only does Dean realize that because they're where they are, all these people would have died, the plane would have crashed, for instance, because the demon would have done it and there wouldn't have been anyone to stop him. But he's already realized even before that he doesn't have Sam is his brother, but they don't have a relationship. He says bitch and Sam doesn't notice a jerk. They don't have, anything because he stole Sam's prom date and money and things. And Dean really misses that he's like, if he doesn't have anything else, he has this relationship with his brother. And I also have to say with Lebanon, because I just saw this recently on the gag reel.
Mhm.
And there's a great moment, and they're all standing around because they have to send John back. And Mary and Dean and Sam and John are all like heartbroken, but this is how it has to be. And Sam slams the thing down to smash the pearl, and it jets into John's crotch. And Jensen and Jared immediately fall down laughing. And I think it takes Sam Smith a second to realize what happened. And then she's like crying. And yeah, Jeffrey Dean Morgan is like, trying not to fall down. So it's so funny when you see these really deeply emotional. I mean, that's a really heartbreaking moment. And then in the gag reel, you have this hilarious thing where the pearl is just like,
Well, and Mystery Spot's another one of those where it depends on us, like knowing we're observing and observing that we're observing and observing that we're observing us observing. It's got those layers, because the humor wouldn't work as well without that wink and a nod. And even the expressions on Sam's face when he shouldn't know he has an audience, but just the expressions on his face throughout it as he loses Dean in one improbable way after another, or that whole fight about, you peed yourself. No, well, what do you expect? I got hit by a car. It is letting us watch from the outside, but we're also watching from the inside. It is a beautiful meta episode that's just done so well.
Mm-hmm.
So on to, wow, there's so many to pick from. Baby. We've got the episode that is written from the point of view of the Impala. Nothing happens in that episode that doesn't happen in or within sight of the Impala. And that concept in itself is very meta, that we're taking the point of view of the car.
Mm-hmm. And we get to see a lot of moments that we don't really get to see much of, like them just driving down the road and eating, and Sam's grabbing for the wheel and Dean's batting his hands away. And Sam has a rare moment of getting lucky, but it's that happens. But then we also have the things like, she's like, where's my hairpin? And somebody else is like, well, where's this or where's that? The joyriders, when they valet park and they go for a joyride, and all of those little things all end up having their moment later. They all come into play. Mm-hmm. I know you like to talk about Chekhov's gun. If you see it, you've got to use it. And they do. It's like, oh, where is that hairpin? Oh, here's where we needed it. Here's where we need the penny, because we've got to put it on his tongue or something. And yeah, really.
The green cooler and the werepire head. And yeah, all of that.
The werepire on the windshield wiper.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that one. Also, there's, Frontier Town, because when they go back in time, and of course now it almost looks prophetic with the,
Walker and Walker Independence.
Yeah, he's a U.S. Marshal. Yeah, I'm a U.S. Marshal and he's a Texas Ranger, and this was long before we had Rust or Big Sky or Walker. So now it kind of makes you wonder if Carburet was writing them, or Chuck. But there are just all those moments, like when Sam rides off very badly on that horse, and Dean just
little horse.
That poor horse. There are just so many in jokes, like Dean when he runs into that girl in the bar, and of course he's always romanticized, we're sure, the westerns and the honky tonk girls, and he finds out that maybe not.
Yeah, a little bit of bad teeth, and the whiskey is like turpentine, and it's not the way he pictured it from all his watching of either John Wayne movies or spaghetti westerns or
Well, and the way he insists on dressing with that serape straight out of the Clint Eastwood movies, and everybody's like, is that a blanket? Why are you wearing a blanket?
oh, yep.
So there are, again, so many knowing jokes, the wink and the nod kind of thing, where the joke is funny because we're in on the joke.
hmm Where he kills Hitler,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
even, he's like, I killed Hitler. And they tell Jody and she's like, thank you. Yeah, he's so self-aware, and so we're so self-aware because it's so kind of out there that we're all in there, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, and I saw a great cartoon of, Dean wearing a shirt that says I killed Hitler and Sam wearing a shirt that says I shot God.
That would work. It's kind of like I'm with stupid, but elevated.
Mm-hmm. The hero's journey is another one where we've seen Sam and Dean have a run of bad luck, which Chuck tries to tell them is that he was always, none of their abilities were actually theirs, which they come to realize he was lying, and this is a fake out. Because of course, with training all their lives, yes, they might have been given an edge with extra luck, but certainly they earned a lot of that skill and ability. So he basically didn't just take away their extra luck, he took away their skill as well. But we see them kind of floundering around trying to be regular people. They suddenly have dental problems, and the Impala doesn't work right, and
Dean's lactose intolerant.
And so, they're running into real people problems that that might have been Chuck's luck, is that they never really had to deal with those things. But it makes them kind of stand outside themselves and look at themselves in a different perspective, which I think is where we're getting the meta piece there.
There was another one that just, as you were talking about that one, I was like, oh, and that's like the one I now can't think of. So keep going on your list.
Well, there's Jump the Shark, which is, the episode where we first meet Adam. But of course, that's a reference to a Happy Days episode where Fonzie rides his motorcycle across a shark-infested pool, and jumps the pool back in the Evel Knievel kind of days. And I love when you have to get the joke, or getting the joke makes it that much deeper. So maybe you weren't watching Happy Days, but why did they call it Jump the Shark? Well, because they knew that this was kind of pushing the boundaries of believability, even for Supernatural. Hey, let's bring back their dead half-brother, but with a twist. He's really a ghoul.
Well, that became, after the Happy Days, that became such a catchphrase. The show jumped the shark when they had a baby, added a new kid character, some kind of version of that event was what then was always referred to ever since as Jump the Shark. So yeah, here they're jumping the shark because, oh, look, we have a new half brother. Go figure. Where was he all these years? And actually it really wasn't him. So that was unfortunate, but yeah, it's a real cute little play that they were so self-aware to say, oh, here we are jumping the shark because we're introducing this character.
Yeah. And well, then there's also metafiction with Metatron narrating what he's doing and spinning this whole narrative. So we're watching him do it, but he's also narrating himself as he's doing it, because he's typing this up at a desk as the scribe of God. So we've sort of got a narration inside of a narration inside of a narration, with him observing himself, observing himself, observing himself. And it gets a little crazy there.
Yeah, he's definitely a really quintessential overly self-aware, like
Mhm.
so aware of himself, being aware of himself, that he's not living so much as he's acting out his own inner movie all the time, or his own inner
Mhm.
story all the time, and then reacting either comically or horrendously when others are not playing along with him in the way that he anticipated they would or wants them to.
Mhm. Um, so then we also had, I'm checking these off the list here. We also had the Ghost Facers. Not one of my favorite episodes, Ghost Facers and Hell House, but wow, what a send up of the whole genre.
I was less of a fan of their first episode with the tulpa,
Hmm.
although it was amusing. I mean, it was an amusing episode and stuff. But the real Ghost Facers is the one where they're filming the show, right?
I think so, yeah. And I
Yeah.
love where they're very serious in their armchairs. And then the garage door goes up because they're really filming this in their parents' garage. And I thought about that so often
You're
during
knocking over the bulletin board.
I thought about that so often during pandemic when people were suddenly, repurposing like closets and side rooms that they'd never used before for Zoom meetings. And it was like, yeah, just don't put up the garage door.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that one because I liked watching it be filmed. Like we saw
Mhm.
so much of it through the lens of them filming. And that was really fun. I enjoy an outside POV a lot of times,
Mhm.
and that whole episode basically an outside POV because we're really watching it through what Ed and I forget the other guy's name,
Yeah.
and the filmmaker guy, and uh, so watching that all play out like that through that outside point of view was really fun and not something we get to do often. It is a trope in reading when you go out and read, which is really great because there's so many different ways you can watch them and you can view them and different angles that you can observe them doing all of their hunting and existing and everything. But this is one of the rare ones we actually have that's canon. And it's just, it's tragic because, poor Corbett pays the
Mhm.
price and everything. But then the ending is hilarious when they're like, oh, Menudo left their dance bag and it erases all of their film and everything. I felt like by the time we had a third episode with them, was it Slender Man or Thin Man or something?
Mhm.
That one to me really didn't didn't even really connect to me with me as far as to the other episodes. I thought they were kind of an amusing, they were bumbling, but they had good hearts.
Mhm.
They wanted to help people and stuff. And hey, if they could have a little television fame along the way, that was okay. So that third one for me didn't resonate like the first two did, but I did enjoy the other Ghost Facer episodes and that perspective they
Yeah.
gave us. I mean, here they are. Oh, well, let's go back to It's a Terrible Life when Sam and Dean as Smith and Wesson want to find out what to do about this. They go to the Ghost Facer site and that's where they learn about salt and iron because, of course, they taught those guys about salt and iron. So that really was a nice full circle.
While the guys are complaining about the Winchesters on the show, that the Winchesters who don't know they're Winchesters are watching. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great circular theme going on there.
Well, and going back to Jump the Shark, there is also a little tidbit in there when they meet Adam at that diner. The name of the diner is Cousin Oliver's. For those of us
Oh,
who watched Brady Bunch back in the day, once the original Brady kids started to kind of age out because they were too old to still be in high school, they brought in Cousin Oliver, who is this little, tow-headed kid. And ever since it's become, Cousin Oliver has become sort of a short hand for when a show is running out of steam and they try to resuscitate it by bringing in a new younger character. And it was just so self-aware of them to, throw that in there on, here's the new younger disposable Winchester. So yeah, we've kind of gone through a whole lot of episodes. Some might have been more meta than others, but do you have any others that we didn't cover, Carole?
oh, I think that really spans a bunch of them. I'm sure as soon as we finish, I'll
Yeah.
be like, oh man. But that really covers a lot of them. I mean, really, we could even go into things like the Christmas special where we see them as children,
Mm-hmm.
or the one with the Striga where we see them as children, and get those different peeks into their life
Mm-hmm.
when they're growing up and everything. It's probably not quite as meta as some of the others, but it definitely infuses more information as to what made them the way they are, so that
Mm-hmm.
we then watch them from that point on, knowing that Dean knew, and then when Sam found out, and all of
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
that.
Well, hey, we are through our time, but thank you so much for having this conversation. And thanks to all of you for watching and listening. Now, before we go on, Carole, tell us where we can find you online.
I'm often here on Facebook on Continual. I'm also in Gail's TFWNC Supernatural group. On Twitter, I'm true_firesign10. I'm also firesign10 on Instagram, and all my fic on AO3. And I'm also on Spotify as one of the co-hosts for So Get This, the lore of supernatural fan fiction.
Very good. And I'm pretty easy to find at gailzmartin.com, morganbryce.com. If you spell them right, you'll find me on all social media channels. I do run the Supernatural TFWNC group here on Facebook. I also am a regular staff columnist for the Winchester Family Business, but most of the time you can find me here on Continual. So thank you again, Carole, for having a great conversation. Thanks to all of you for watching and listening. There will be more Supernatural coming up soon, so we'll see you online.